Welcome to another edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, the series that takes a critical look at Scripture, pointing out its numerous errors, contradictions, and fallacies. This program teaches a kind of Sunday school in reverse by giving you the biblical information that you should have heard but didn't. With millions of Americans hearing a totally one-sided presentation of the Bible, balance is greatly needed. Only when people are given both sides of an issue can a truly objective analysis be possible. And here to provide the alternative perspective is the editor of Biblical Errancy Newsletter, Mr. Dennis McKenzie.
Welcome to the 18th edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary. We're pleased you've joined us. This program, as well as several to follow, will focus on correcting the image many people have of the Bible and its development. Much of the information we're going to present will be reinforced by quotes and biblicists themselves, so I am by no means alone in my observations. Indeed, apologists, even some of a very fundamentalist philosophy, will corroborate many of my conclusions. The best place to launch our analysis would be with the question of inerrancy. That's the belief that the Bible is perfect in all of its ramifications, not only because that goes to the crux of the Bible's credibility and Christianity's reliability, but also because that is the focus of our publication, Biblical Errancy. Before determining whether or not inerrancy is important, we should first note that many people believe in biblical infallibility. This is not really a subject of dispute. There's no need to quote a large number of people to prove the obvious, namely that millions claim the book is perfect. So I'll confine my evidence to just one quote from Arndt's book entitled Bible Difficulties. On page 99 he says, quote, "The Bible itself teaches that it is without error in every respect. When Jesus says in John 10:35 that the Scripture cannot be broken, he is ascribing perfection to all of our sacred book, not merely to just part of it." Unquote. A comment of this nature aptly summarizes the attitude of most Christians, especially fundamentalists. Feeling the book is without errors or imperfections, they proceed from that point onward. Of course, anybody who is reasonably well acquainted with our publication knows that we have spent over 12 years proving precisely the opposite is true. The Bible is anything but perfect. In any event, having established inerrancy as a belief held by many, the question then becomes one of determining its degree of importance. Just how important is it to have an inerrant Bible? In order to answer this question, let's turn to several books by prominent apologists and see what they have to say in this regard. In a book entitled The Battle for the Bible, fundamentalist Harold Lenzel states on page 13, quote, "I regard the subject of this book, that is, biblical inerrancy, to be the most important theological topic of this age." Unquote. That's about as concise a stance as one could formulate. For most conservatives, inerrancy is the major issue, because if it collapses, if it is destroyed, not only the Bible, but Christianity in general will be dealt a blow from which recovery will be impossible. In a thick volume entitled Basic Theology, Charles Ryrie, a professor at a well-known conservative bastion in Dallas, Texas, known as Dallas Theological Seminary, states on page 77, quote, "Can one be a biblicist and deny inerrancy? Not if the Bible teaches its own inerrancy. If the Bible contains some errors, no matter how few or how many, one can be sure that his understanding, how can one be sure that his understanding of Christ is correct? Even if the errors are in supposedly minor matters, Any error opens the Bible to suspicion on other points that may not be so minor. If inerrancy falls, other doctrines will fall too, unquote. This is a valid point that conservatives make repeatedly, and the liberal wing of Christianity would do well to note the truth contained therein. If you don't have an inerrant Bible, then you're going to encounter a large number of problems. And what are some of these difficulties? Ryrie notes that doctrinal questions having to do with basic biblical concepts, quote, may well be affected by denying inerrancy, unquote, and then he provides a brief list of some of the more prominent examples. First, people will tend to deny the historical fall of Adam. If the book is not error-free, how can we be sure that Adam and Eve really lived? And if they did not exist, the whole concept of original sin disappears. If Adam and the sin of man disappear, then the question of why Jesus died on the cross is brought into doubt, if not actually proven to be useless. In effect, the atonement becomes a non-event. Second, if you deny inerrancy, you'll begin to question the whole concept of miracles. If miracles vanish, the Bible itself is brought into question, because if there is any concept which is central to the Bible, it is that of miracles. Without miracles, there can be no resurrection, for instance. And without a resurrection, Christianity crumbles. To quote Paul, your faith is in vain. In a book entitled What You Should Know About Inerrancy, Ryrie states on page 103, quote, no one can predict with total accuracy what doctrinal dominoes may topple after inerrancy falls. Defections do not always follow a logical pattern. Nevertheless, some general predictions can be made as to what may happen when inerrancy goes.